Welcome to episode 8. Woohoo! And on today's episode, we are going to the beautiful country of Jordan, and we'll be going to, be in Amman, Petra, Jerash, the Dead Sea, and the Jordan Valley. Sorry, not value, valley. So far we have covered 5,300 miles of my 30,000 mile road trip from Paris to Cape Town. Okay, and then my review for the week is from Delris, and she's 5 stars, and she says, fascinating. I've always been marveled by those who have traveled the world. So many great stories to share. Glad I found this podcast. Well, thank you very much, Delris, and I'm glad you found me too. And just wanted to let you all know the website is coming along, so you can always get more info over there at manyroadstraveled.com, as well as if you'd like to buy me a coffee or a beer, you can do that too and support the podcast so I can keep it ad-free as long as possible. Okay, now let's crack on with Jordan. So we've been on the road almost 7 weeks. I think this was day 45, and we is my friend Casey. So he's the guy I left with, and we traveled together for a few months before he bailed on me. More of that later. So yeah, it's day 45. We got into Amman from Damascus, and we got to Amman, the capital of Jordan, at night. So we just a pretty very long few days, and I also had not a very nice taxi ride from Syria to Jordan with my taxi driver, who, let's just say, had very sleazy wandering hands, and I was in the front seat. Anywho, yeah, so got to the Amman that night and decided to splash out on a $15 a night posh hotel, which actually had a shower and a bathroom. Showers are a very rare commodity for us back then. Just to recap, if you're new, this is your first episode you've listened to, I would suggest starting from the first episode, the intro, to get a backstory so you can come along the whole trip with us. Yeah, but showers, I think I average about 3 every day, the most. Okay, so the next morning we woke up, and of course it's a Friday, and in Muslim countries Fridays are like their holidays, like our Sundays, our Christian Sundays. So of course the banks were closed, because remember, this is back in 1993, March 93, and there was, no internet, no digital cameras, and definitely no ATMs back then. So you had the banks or the post offices usually change money. But on Fridays, like I said, Muslim countries that are closed. So as we're looking for, another place we could change money, we met this really nice Jordanian man called Ahmed, and he was like, okay, I'll help you to change money. We're like, awesome. So it is 1.20 Jordan dinars back then to the dollar, American dollar, and now it's 1.4 Jordan dinars to American dollar. Okay, just so you have a rough idea. So it really hasn't changed too much in like 27 years, which is a little crazy. So after we got our money, Ahmad suggested to us, well, why don't I take you on like a day tour? We can go to the Dead Sea, Mount Nebo, Bethany beyond the Jordan, and some hot springs. We're like, that sounds awesome. And he's only going to charge us 20 Jordanian dinars. I'll just call him JD from now on, which, super. Okay, cool. So we headed out to the Dead Sea, which is about 45 minutes from Amman, and wow. So literally we were at the lowest point of our trip. Because the Dead Sea is the lowest point on Earth. It's about 431 meters below sea level, and it's 34% salinity. And the Jordan River ends in the Dead Sea, so the river water basically evaporates, and it just leaves behind lots of salt and minerals. So hence why the Dead Sea is so saline. Has a high salinity rate. And then also, of course, the Dead Sea mud is infamous around the world because of this rich content of minerals. So when you walk around, there's just buckets of mud kind of all around that area. So you just slather yourself up and kind of bake out in the sun and let that dry, and then you go in the water. Well, of course, I gave myself the challenge to see if I could put my head under the water, like actually, dive down. Okay, do not do that. Oh my gosh, my eyes burned. Like, even when obviously I had them closed, but didn't matter. And you can't do it anyways. You're literally, I mean, you could sit reading a newspaper lying flat out. It's like you're on an air mattress. That's how high above you are. It's amazing. Like, I just remember just thinking, this is so cool. And of course, like, the Dead Sea, like kind of in the middle of the Dead Sea. So half it's Israeli and half of it's Jordanian. So you can see Israel right there too. Yeah, so we spent a couple, probably about an hour or so in there. Yeah, it was a very cool feeling. And then you have a shower afterwards and try and wash off the salt, which I probably washed off half. It sticks to you, man. And I'm not sure how we found out about it, but we decided, so we asked him out, we're like, can we go to Jerash instead of Mount Nebo? And he was like, sure, whatever you like. So, but we did pass like Mount Nebo. So Mount Nebo is very close by. It's like 15 minutes or something like that. But that is where Moses looked out to the promised land. So the story goes. And you can see like Jericho and Jerusalem and Jerash all from this mountaintop. And if you wanted to go now, it's only one Jordanian dinar. But that's also where Bethany beyond the Jordan. And that is where apparently John the Baptist baptized Jesus. So if you wanted to go to, these days, it's 12 JD. So we're just like, we'd rather go to Jerash. So we did, like I said, pass through it's about an hour drive from the Dead Sea to Jerash. We did drive through the Jordan Valley, and we did stop, and I took a photo because for my great grandmother, my Nana, because her last name was Jordan. So I remember going, okay, Nana, this one's for you. Of the Jordan Valley, but it's beautiful. Anyway, so we got to Jerash, like no idea what to expect. Again, before you Google and research stuff, but like when we went, we just didn't have a clue. It was a bit like Syria. We had no idea what to expect. But I quite like that because you kind of have no expectations. So it's very much harder to be disappointed when you have no expectations rather than when you have high expectations. It's like when someone says, oh, you got to see this movie, it's brilliant. You just hear that over and over, and then you watch it and you're like, yeah, it's okay. Anyways, we got to Jerash, and Jerash is apparently like one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. And they found evidence that from the Neolithic era. So that was like 7,500 BC. That's almost 10,000 years ago. People lived there. Crazy. But I think it's called the ruins of Jerash now. It's in the middle of the actual town, Jerash. And it was only discovered about 130-ish years ago. And they reckon still a lot of it is still buried under modern day Jerash. And it's now part of a UNESCO. It was incredible. Like, it was incredible. It's a whole ancient Roman city, pretty much intact. And the Romans took over in 64 BC, like conquest that area, and that's when they built the town Jerash, like the ancient town. And it was a very, very popular place because it was on big trading routes between Arabia, Damascus, and Cairo. And yeah, so it was a very famous city back then. And then I guess the 12th, 13th century, it kind of the old part of it got abandoned, and that's when it got buried through the centuries. So when you get there, you come up, and it's called the Hadrian's Arch, and that's the kind of I think it's the South Gate entrance, and just that is beautiful. It's huge, and then you come in, and then you walk up, and then there's the Hippodrome, which it used to be able to seat 15,000 people. So it's this huge kind of amphitheater. And then you come along to the South Gate, and there's a guy there, and he opens the gate for you. And you come to the Forum, which is this it's like an oval shaped plaza, which is lined with many columns. And then from there, you can either go left or you go right. And we end up going left. And then we kind of walked around the whole complex. It's really big, actually. You probably need 3 to 4 hours there. So you walk around the whole complex. And then we climbed up to the Zeus temple, which is mostly destroyed. But the view is amazing of the whole old Jerash city. And it's just crazy because you have all the new Jerash right around it. Like you literally, it's in the middle of the new city. And then you come along to the South Theater, and that used to be able to seat 2,000 people. And it's just amazing how intact it is. And when you're at the South Theater, you could go to so there's, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 feet circumference, like the middle of the bottom of the theater where they used to perform. And the acoustics are amazing. Like you can actually hear the difference from when you like try and shout or talk or sing or whatever, and then you step like 3 feet to the side. The amplification of the acoustics in the very center still works. It's like having a microphone. It's crazy. Like 2,000 years old and it's still perfect. And then you come out of the South Theater and you go to the main street, which is called Cardo Maximus, which is the main street. And then that's all lined with columns and really beautiful architecture and designs. And you can even still see the chariot ruts in the stones on the street. So you're just walking along where these Roman chariots rode and gladiators and yeah, it was crazy. And I thought Acropolis was pretty amazing because it is. Jerash, it's like 100 times bigger and more amazing because it is literally the old city preserved almost perfectly. And it's about the same age. And I never heard of it. Even now, when I've hardly ever heard of other people talking about Jerash Dordogne. So back then it was definitely a little hidden secret. And we were the only one, me and Casey were the only ones there in the whole place. So I love that. And then we were walking along the main street, Cardo Maximus. And there's also, it's called the Cathedral, but that was like their water fountain. And I stumbled across this bath, which apparently was one of the Queen's baths. So of course I got in, took a picture. And then there's also the Artemis Temple, which is that again, it's surrounded by these tall Corinthian columns, and 11 out of the 12 columns are still standing. And there's also a prison there with underground passages. It's the whole city. And you can even see their sewage system too. It was pretty incredible. So yeah, we stayed there about 3 hours. And then on the way home, Ahmad asked us if we would like to come to his family's house for dinner. So of course we said yes. Free food, of course. So yeah, so we went there, and it was just outside of Amman. And his family was very, very nice. And we were sitting on the floor, and in India actually as well. Yeah, you sit on the floor and eat. So it's like they have a special kind of rug-ish kind of thing. Spread in there, and then all the food goes down on the floor, and it's communal eating, which is great. I love it. You eat with your hands, and away you go. So we were, chatting with the kids and waiting for it, and then I guess this again, really super not like special meal that because we were guests in their home that the mother had cooked. So she comes out with this massive platter, and it was a goat's head with the eyeballs and fur still on it, and the top of its head had been cut off, and inside was rice and the brains in the goat's cooked in the goat's intestines inside the goat's head, roasted. Now, I haven't eaten red meat, since I was 19. So at that point, it was 4 years I hadn't eaten red meat. But I knew that this was a really big honor. And I'm like, oh my God. I have to try that. I have to try this because it's really rude not to. She's gone to this effort. And I can't, they didn't speak much English. Ahmad did, but it's just rude to just refuse food, right? So I took a teaspoon, like literally a teaspoon. And of course, and also another thing is they will wait for you to have like eat first. They won't eat. So everyone's watching you as well. So I took this little teaspoon of rice brains and intestines from the goat's head. The goat's, he's still staring at me. And yeah, ate it. And that was it. 1 teaspoon was enough for me. Casey loved it. He dug right in. Luckily, she had some cheese and bread. It's these really nice, like honeycomb dessert things. But we had a lovely time, and that was the first and only time I've ever been given a goat's head for dinner, for sure. Yeah, so we got back to Amman. We did change hotels to get it to a cheaper one. $15, way too much. So we found one half the price. And then we got, so day 46, so day 2 in Jordan. Just a quick sponsor break. So if you're looking for a website, build a mobile app, webinars, email autoresponders, basically you name it, this all-in-one marketing platform has got it. I've been using it myself for almost 4 years and it rocks. And I've managed to get you a sweet deal. So for just $1, which is also guaranteed, for 30 days, you can try it out for $1, basically. It's awesome. So get on over to manyroadstravel.com/website and check it out. Honestly, you're going to be blown away with the value you get. Okay, back to the show. We decided to head out to Petra. And that was only about $2 Jordanian. We just got a public minibus out there, and it was about 3.5 hours. They dropped us off outside this cheap hotel, so we threw our bags in, and it was about 2:45 p.m. And we decided, let's just try and get to Petra today because we are so close to Africa. It's like I said, been almost 7 weeks, and we just so want to get to Africa. So we hitched back into the city center, and decided, okay, well, and they offered horses, like you go to see Petra on horses. So we're like, okay, that'll be faster than walking, because I can't remember what time it closed back then, maybe 5, because it was in the winter, so in the daytime, or sorry, in the summertime they stay open. But so we get these horses, and it was only like 1 Jordanian dinar to go to Petra, and it was 4.5 each for a horse, like a horse each. So I had this like rugged white horse. He's friendly. And so we get going. And then, of course, it's like the owners walk the horse in front of you. So we're like, okay, this is great. This is not going to be any faster. But it was kind of cool. So it's about 0.5 kilometer to the Siq from where we got the horses. And then the Siq is like 1 kilometer to the opening. Well, the Siq is a narrow, very narrow, like gorge between the mountains. And it kind of, goes around corners and stuff like that. So it feels like you're walking into a mountain pretty much. And for 1 kilometer, so it's quite a ways. So if you're claustrophobic, it's not too bad. Like there's wider parts, but there are some pretty narrow parts. Anyways, you finally come to the entrance and get ready to have your mind blown. Because that's where the infamous, when you think of Petra, this is what you think of, the treasury. And it's this 40-meter, like half carved in, half built in the mountain, like so reddish mountains. Oh my God. It's so crazily beautiful. You're just like, what? And it's again, 2,000 years old. And I just thought I was on a movie set. It just didn't seem real at all. And funnily enough, this is where, if you've seen Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, well, that was the Temple of Doom. So when they're riding on horseback and like halt in front of the opening, that is Petra, the treasury. Wow, yeah, it was amazing. And then so we went inside, and it was very cavernous and dark, but there was like, pretty sure there's paintings on the wall and some like old pottery that they put there. And then there was another door that went further back, but that was like locked to the public. And then we got back on our horse, and when you go through the Siq, and then by the end of the Siq, it literally just opens up into this really, really big valley. I think that's what's called Little Petra. Well, it's a whole village carved out of the mountains, the sandstone mountains, like a whole village. I just can't remember thinking, like, how did they do this? Like 2,000 years ago? Like, what tools did they have? It was really mind-blowing. And then also around the treasury, there's also tombs kind of all around, or yeah, around it really. And then there's also, it's called the Street of Facade, and that's where the royal tombs were. So I guess where the royals were buried. But wow. And also, you can go up to, it's called Kupta Trail. So so there's two places, like there's one trail that they'll, like the guides and things will try and take you, but don't go to that one. Try and find Kupta Trail. So you go up like hundreds and hundreds of steps. So it's a good workout. But the view is amazing. So because you're looking down on the treasury. So you have a bird's eye view. Be very careful. There's no guardrails or anything like that. But if you want like great photos or just amazing bird's eye view, definitely go up there. Which we did do that too. And then, but it was like getting close to close. So we get back on our horses. And we I was ahead of Casey. And then remember we still got the owners, like, walking us through, holding the reins. Well, we got almost through the Sikh. My horse obviously was like, okay, that's a wrap. My day is done. And he just took off. So then I felt like Indiana Jones because I was pulling back the reins as hard as I could. He was having none of it. So we are literally galloping, and there is a lot of people around. And like I said, we're still in the last bit of the Sikh. So I'm just yelling, get out of the way, get out of the way. There's like horses with carts and everything. And my horse just had a mind of his own, and we were just galloping away. We came to one point where he had to stop because there was a horse and cart in front of him. So he stopped, got past him, and took off again. Casey was trying to catch me, and his horse would not go above a trot, but walk, trot, walk. Yeah. So I was like way, way ahead of him. We finally got to like the horse's pasture where we rented the horses, and he just like skidded on the brakes. It's like, okay, I'm home, dinner time. Of course, the guy he started kind of having to go at me. I'm like, dude, I was trying to pull the reins as hard as I possibly could, but he knew his shift was over. But it was an incredible feeling, like, wind through my hair, and honestly, I felt like I was Indiana Jones. So finally, Casey got there, joined me, and we met back to our hotel, because we really hadn't even seen that. It was more like a hostel. And that was probably the first hostel we'd stayed in this whole trip, because it's the first one we found, because we didn't have a guidebook for Europe or Middle East, so it was whatever we could find. Oh, and it was so nice because there was other travelers there. Again, we hadn't met any other travelers since Marmaris, Turkey, which is probably like almost a month, definitely 4 weeks prior. So there's a bunch of Kiwis there and Canadians. There was lots of people. It was just so nice because then Casey and I finally could get a break from each other and just chat to other people. Yeah, we had dinner there. It was lovely. Really nice. Okay, so on day 47, we decided, okay, we're going to get up at 6 in the morning because we wanted to get to Aqaba, Jordan. And we were on the minibus by 6:45. It took a few hours to get there. And then we went to the Egyptian embassy to get our Egyptian visa. We were a little bit concerned because we met this Canadian guy the night before at the hostel, and he said, oh, it's $80 Canadian for an Egyptian visa. He had bought it in the UK. So Casey and I were just a little bit worried because it was $80. Anyway, got to the Egyptian embassy about 9. By 10 o'clock, we left with smiles on our faces because it only cost us $22 each. So that was a little bargain. And we managed to get to the port, get through customs, and get on the 12 o'clock noon ferry to Nuweiba, Egypt. Yes, that's right. Africa. However, you're going to have to stay tuned till next Thursday's episode to hear about this Sinai, Egypt, that we finally made it after about almost 7 weeks. Okay, so my top 3 tips for Jordan would be nowadays, obviously with COVID, I had a look today. So today's September 2nd. And yeah, Jordan is closed to the, outside people. However, the sites are open. If you live in Jordan, then you can go see the sites in Jordan now. Anyway, so for tip number one would be nowadays, like whenever COVID ever ends, then I would definitely recommend getting, it's called the Jordan Pass. And that gets you your visa and price to see 40 different attractions, including Petra, Dead Sea, Jerash, for 70 Jordanian dinars, which is a bargain. Because nowadays it's 40 JD just for the visa, and then it's 50 JD to go to Petra, 20 JD to go to the Dead Sea, and 12 JD to see Jerash. And you can also get, if you did want to go to the Beyond Bethany, Bethany Beyond the Jordan, you can also take a little box and you can get that for 8 Jordan dinars instead of 12. So you'd save a lot of money. And how it works is you just go to the official website, so Google Jordan Pass, and you have 1 year. Once you buy it, you have 1 year to use it up, and then once you arrive in Jordan, you have 2 weeks to see everything, basically, which is plenty of time. We were there for 2 days and saw a lot. So that would be tip number one. Tip number two, they now have at Petra, you could do, I'm not a fan of tours, but sometimes you have to take a tour because that's the only way you can experience things or see things sometimes. So they have these tours, which are Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. And it's 2 hours, but you go at nighttime, and they put like 1,500 candles all around the treasury, which would be so cool to see, actually, especially like Starry Night. And they play music, and you get to walk around, and yeah, so I would check that out because that would be pretty cool to see. And then tip number 3, we were there during Ramadan. So Ramadan is a month-long, it's like the biggest Muslim holiday, I guess. It's like they fast, and so it's about a month. And it's usually, I think, in February or March. It changes every year, depends on the moon. So be aware that not only are things closed normal time, like Fridays, like banks and government offices and stuff like that, but also during Ramadan, they fast from, I think it's 5 in the morning to 6 p.m. So there will be, like we were in the Middle East the whole month of Ramadan, and you can still find restaurants and you eat stuff, but just be aware that they're not eating all from, so they have their breakfast at 6 p.m. Okay, and also if you did want to go to Israel, because it's right there, like especially from the Dead Sea, it's right there, then I would definitely advise getting the Israeli stamp on a separate piece of paper, like not attached to your passport, because if you have that, you will not be allowed into most Muslim countries. So I would, definitely do that. And then for female travelers, I felt very safe there. Dress appropriately. So, except obviously the Dead Sea. It's fine in your bikinis or bathing suits, obviously. But yeah, just kind of, again, like t-shirts, shorts, like longer shorts, and skirts are fine. But I was absolutely loved Jordan. Like I said, I didn't know what to expect, and I was super pleasantly surprised. And I was just amazed at how I'd never even heard of Jerash. Like everyone has heard about the Acropolis, but I don't even know if I'd even heard of Petra. Like I'd seen Indiana Jones, obviously, but I never knew that's where it was until I think we were on that trip. But yeah, Jerash is incredible. So I would definitely highly recommend going to Jordan once you can. Okay, well, I think that is a wrap. And like I said, make sure you tune in next Thursday when we actually finally hit Africa. Okay, and like I said before, also, head over to the website. There's going to be lots of stuff on there, like more details about wherever I've been now, like on this trip, like more updated advice and travel tips and stuff like that, prices and stuff like that. So yeah, so head on over there, manyroadstravel.com, and make sure you leave your reviews too, so I can give you a shout out. Okay, until next time, safe travels, one road at a time.